Hi everyone, welcome. This is lecture 1A, Introduction to Project Management will be our discussion today. Really, we're going to be looking at the aspects of goal setting, the constraint triangle, how that works, and we're going to be just introducing you a little bit to some of the aspects of leadership and running projects. A lot of this material you will find in chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the book, as well as it'll be diving into the other section, which will be lecture 1B. Okay, so I'm Tom Stephenson, and once again, welcome. So we've already sent out the review of the course outline. So if you haven't looked at that, please go to that YouTube video, and that will discuss what we're looking at in this particular course, how the grading will be broken down, all of those kind of fundamental issues. So that's in a separate sort of introduction video. So for today, we're going to be looking at, as I mentioned, reasons for a different type of management for project-based firms, some of the attributes of construction projects requiring special management techniques, and as I mentioned, goals, objectives, a little bit about goal theory. So sometimes we hear about goals, but we don't think about them too much, but it's a big part of being successful in construction, and it's also a big part about being successful at anything, to be quite honest. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of enlightenment in that area as we go through the different topics. So really, when we think about project management, it's a discipline, real discipline. It's a large-based field, and there's certain fundamentals that you're going to find that are the same no matter what industry you are in. You know, some of my colleagues might disagree, but there's a lot of fundamental areas that deal with more the soft side of things and how we communicate and how we get people to actually add value to our projects. And so that becomes a very interactive, communicative type of process. And of course, a project in particular is different than everyday operations. And construction is really a project-based endeavor. We have projects, whatever you want to look at in construction, it's a project. You know, are we building a house? Are we doing a renovation? Are we building a shopping mall? Are we building a hospital? So some of the fundamentals that have to do with a project are it starts at a particular time, it finishes at a particular time. So there's usually constraints around that. There's usually a budget that we have to work within. There's usually certain quality expectations that we have to manage. And really, our primary objective is to achieve the project goals, which typically revolves around those areas that I was just talking about. So some of the attributes of construction projects, as we were mentioning, you know, there's a budget. We might have bid on this project competitively, and then we're trying to work within that budget. And how well we work within that budget will determine if we meet our profit margins that we had targeted for the project or beat those profit margins. The finite durations, it's always a big deal in construction projects. You know, can you complete this project in a timely fashion? Are you going to meet the finish date for the project? Some projects are so time-oriented that every day that you're late on a project, you might have to pay back the client, or they will deduct off what they owe you, the client. Those are called liquidated damages contracts, and that's usually where the client wants certainty that you're putting all your effort into completing on time, because there's this negative consequence to not finishing on time. And this gets to be a really big deal. We'll talk about it later in the course. In this course, in project management, planning, and scheduling that you have next semester, it's a big deal. Located away from the company, like some, you know, how far away, where are we located? What is our geographical location with this particular project? If you're a company like PCL or Ellis Dunn, it might even be in another country, never mind another jurisdiction within Canada. Each project requires separate management teams. So you've got a team that you set up for that project, and they work collaboratively on that project, also engaging with subcontractors, suppliers, consultants, the owner, etc. And usually if you're the project manager for the project, you're sort of the source. You have ultimate responsibility on the project. Your company has ultimate responsibility over this project. So there's a single source of responsibility, whoever's managing, as designated as managing that project. So at the highest level, it's the company that's contracted to complete that work. And there's, of course, separate project accounting. Each project you want to account for. What did it cost? What did we plan for? What was our baseline budget for the project? What's our baseline schedule for the project? And then you want to compare as you go along. Oh, this costs more, this costs less. We did this faster, we did this slower. So that you have really good data, and that will help you not only on this project, but on future projects as well. So single project can have, well, will have thousands of parts and systems that integrate together. And very often it's good to think of the end in mind. Like, what is this finished project going to be? And imagine that you're actually in this finished project and what it's serving. If it's a hospital, you know, people, there's doctors doing, surgeons doing surgery in an operating room. If it's a college building, there's classrooms being constructed. If it's a house, a family is living in it. And you work your way backward piece by piece by piece. And that's kind of giving you a good deconstruction of the project so you can go forward with the construction project. So all of that's going to require a lot of procurements of materials, long lead items, short lead items, you know, something that you got to order 6 months in advance, something that you could probably pick up or get delivered within a day or two. You have to procure all of your contractors, your subcontractors for the work, and you have to coordinate that work, and you have to figure out the logistics, the timing, and the predecessors and the successors. You have a client, somebody that you are accountable to and that you need information from very often, and that you may have certain constraints to work within. So each site is controlled by, and depends on the contract type, what we call them. Is it the general contractor, maybe a lump sum kind of contract? Is it a construction management type contract where you're acting in the owner's interests and you're procuring the subcontractors and coordinating the work for them, but you're not directly contracting with all the subcontractors? There's a lot of different contract types, and we'll talk about this as well in the course, so you have a good sense of that. So goals and objectives of projects, you know, to be successful and profitable, and you can define what success is. It means a lot of things. Number one, you do want to be profitable. If you're not profitable as a business, you're going to go out of business. But you also want to make sure that you're leaving behind happy clients, because in this industry, and most industries, about 80% of the work is repeat with the same client. So I don't want to do anything that is negative towards this client that they don't want me to do future work, because it's very hard to go around trying to get all new clients all the time. It's very progressive to be able to have repeat business. About 20 years, I guess about 18 years ago, if you recall, e-building at George Brown College Casa Loma campus, I was actually a project manager and chair, acting director for the Center for Building Technologies at the time. And we had that building being constructed, e-building. And it was very important for us as a college to have that contractor finish that project on time. And they were actually about 3 months behind with 6 months to go. The project actually finished on time, but of course quality was affected in a negative way. I can walk around the building and point out all the quality deficiencies that went on. So when something like that happens, you're probably not the preferred contractor for the next college project, like the waterfront campus or the student residence that was built downtown. Some other contractor gets that. And if they do a really good job on, say, the waterfront campus, like Elliston did, then they get to build the student residence. They're more preferred. So you want to build good relationships wherever possible. And you want to look at what is it that the client wants and what can we do to satisfy the clients while satisfying our own profitability requirements as well. It's not an easy task. By no means is it an easy task. We work in a very competitive environment in the construction industry, and it can be challenging at times. So this is what this course is all about, is trying to understand those challenges so that you can better manage the site during those challenges, and what's the actual process that's involved. So when we're looking at management techniques, it's necessary to control project building so that we can achieve the objectives and understand the objectives going into it. There's a wide variety of management techniques, and everybody's got their own personalities as well. So it's trying to understand your personalities. There's a lot of soft skills mixed in with leadership and communication, and seeing what best works for you, your own personality, the culture of the company you're working for. There's a lot of little variables, but they're all little tools. And if you can build up sort of this toolbox of skills, you can determine which tool I'm going to pull out for this particular instance. You know, you don't want to pull out a hammer if it needs a screwdriver. And so that kind of thought pattern goes into managing projects. And it really does take a team to design and build facilities. So it's a well lubricated, coordinated team where that comes into play. So understanding goals, probably the best example I have for that is SMART goals. SMART goals, you can look them up on Google, and you can find a lot of information out there, and you can really come to some deep understanding. But it's something easy to remember, I find. There's a lot on goal theory, but usually they fall back on these elements. And I've kind of adjusted them a little bit that it makes sense for the construction industry. So specific needs to be well defined, clear to anyone that has basic project knowledge. So, you know, your goal needs to be specific. That one of the ways that's helpful, we have a contract, we have drawings, we have specifications, and it tells us very specifically what we have to do, what we have to accomplish, when we have to accomplish it, and what our budget is. So specific has a bunch of these elements. Not being specific is like, I want to renovate my basement. Well, what do you want to do? Are we going to underpin the basement? Are we going to put in a kitchen and a separate exit? What's involved? That's not being specific. We need to be specific if we're going to be able to move towards our goals. It needs to be measurable. You need to be able to see how you're doing at different points. So developing a really good project schedule and breaking things down so that you have activities and tasks, developing timelines and budgets for those tasks, and then monitoring how you're doing compared to your plan. That makes it very measurable. Agreed upon. So on this one specifically, I look at it, it always gets confusing if you look up SMART goals on the internet a little bit, because it says attainable or realistic, and it's hard to distinguish between the two. So I kind of make attainable agreed upon. So agreed upon with the stakeholders. That means if I'm subcontracting with a plumbing company and I need them to do this work in a month, and they're telling me it's going to cost this much, we have agreement that they're going to work those particular activities, that part of their contract, within that time frame. So they're saying they can do it, as opposed to me telling them they're going to do it and them not agreeing to it, which happens all too often in construction. The realistic resource base is, now I'm looking at this subcontractor and I'm saying, are they able to do this? Has past history told me they're capable of doing this? Do they usually tell me it up straight? In the construction industry, sometimes people tell you what they want to hear at that moment, and then they change it when you're in the heat of trying to get it done. So you'll find that there's a law called Pareto's principle or Pareto's law, and you can look that one up as well. Very good tool. It's the 20-80 rule. It was developed by an Italian economist, and he kind of observed things in the world. And what really comes out of it is, like, 20% of my students take 80% of my time. There's a good example. 20% of my subcontractors take 80% of my time. 20% of my clients make me 80% of my profit. Identify before I enter into a project the 20% of the elements that I think are going to be tricky, complex. and I put more effort into making sure that they're not, that I've worked out the details. On every project that I've ever done, when it's a new project, I kind of look at it that way. There's things that are in my wheelhouse that I feel comfortable with, and there's things I don't feel so comfortable with, and I have to put more effort into those things I don't feel so comfortable with. And a good example would be if this was you're a site super and this is your first lead project, and you're not so big that you got your own lead coordinator. Some companies have that. If you have to manage that process, I'd be nervous about it because I haven't done that before. It's new to me. So I put a lot more time and effort into making sure I don't do something out of place. If it's my 15th lead project, I have it down. I have systems, I have protocols, I have things in place that I know and understand. So it's in my wheelhouse now. That probably wouldn't be one of the things then. So it's kind of some things that you go through a learning curve. Just remember, nobody knows everything. And the longer you're in this business, the more you're going to realize that the things you don't know. That's what I've found over the years. So we have agreed upon, attainable, realistic, resource-based, and then time-based. You got to have a sense of urgency. If I give you an assignment, I got to have a due date. If I don't have a due date, I'd be getting assignments handed in from students from 20 years ago. Oh, I finally want to graduate. Here's my assignment. Doesn't work that way. Got to have a sense of urgency, and then that helps me to plan and schedule the work, and then I can check and balance and see how I'm doing against that benchmark. So SMART goals require that, and they also require a commitment to do the work. If you're not committed, there's some people that they're not really into it. That's going to be problematic as well. So, and that's what you want to try to do with your team. That's what you want to do with your subcontractors. You want to engage people, and you want to seek their commitment. It's much more helpful if you can get people committed to the work and engaged in the work. So not all well-intended goals are good. We can have poor goals sometimes. I could give an example of a very large home builder that I did a lot of consulting work with. And at one point, their goal was to have no late closings. So no house is going to close late. And we're going to tie an extrinsic reward, a bonus, to the site supers if they finish them on time. Guess what? What do you think? They didn't have houses closing late. They closed on time. What do you think the problem was? Big problem was quality. They rushed things, and after the house closed, they had all these complaints about quality, and they had to go back and fix them, and it cost them a lot of money. Even worse, quality was left to a different department. So the site supers that messed things up by rushing them, it wasn't even their problem. It was somebody else's problem. So sometimes goals that are intended to be good could be negative. It's good from the, if you're a builder, you finish it on time, homeowner's happy, they get to go in their house, but it's not good if they go in and they're not happy with the end product, So probably a better goal would have been to tie that extrinsic goal also with quality and callbacks and things of that nature. So you want to have something that balances. You got to be careful for what you wish for sometimes. The financial crisis of 2008, it was really people being offered extrinsic rewards to provide mortgages because they would get rewards. So if you had a pulse, you would get a mortgage. But if you defaulted later on the mortgage, then that could put the bank in jeopardy. That could put the whole financial system in jeopardy. So these are some of the things to think about too. So in construction, we really have these 5, and I've taken the PMP, Project Management Professional program, and qualified and all that, and they'll typically focus on these being constraints that you have to work within. I would like to flip that around and say that they're also goals. It's a constraint, we have to fit in this time. It's a constraint, we have to work within this. Yes, but flip it around, it's also a goal. This is the time frame we want to meet or beat. This is the budget we want to meet or beat. This is the quality expectation we want to meet. This is the safety requirements while doing all this, that we don't compromise anybody's safety. Thinking about it in those terms can be much more engaging and motivating in my perspective, because I think it's a more optimistic way of looking at things rather than saying, I'm handcuffed, I'm stuck, we've got to finish within this time period. It's like, how can we figure this out to get this done better? How can we figure out to get this done quicker? How can we figure out to get this done at a lower cost? And those are challenges, right? And people, when they're properly engaged, they step up to challenges. So these are some of the things I would think about. So there is a relationship that goes on too. So for example, quality and time. Well, if I shorten the time, do you think quality goes up or quality goes down? I just said at the Waterfront campus, 3 months behind with 6 months to go, they finished on time. What do you think happened to quality? Quality goes down typically. If we have a client wanting to open a resource store and we add scope, well, that's fairly easy. Costs are going to go up, right? You're adding stuff to it, so costs are going to go up. And you want to open a retail store and you're going to shorten it by 2 months. And if we're looking at these two parameters, time and cost, what's going to happen? We've got, we're shortening time, so cost goes up. If you fall behind on a project, what happens? Cost goes up because you end up working overtime. Sometimes you can do some early manipulations of things. You can stagger things. You can have some activities go concurrently, but at a certain point, costs definitely go up. But it also has limitations. You can't always get the time back. There's what we call the impossible zone. This is like where it doesn't matter how much money you want to put into this. You can't shorten the time anymore. You're already working weekends. You're already working evenings. You've already got the project filled with people that they're getting in each other's way. That slows productivity. So there's these interrelationships that we've always got to be thinking about in our mind in construction. Usually it doesn't matter the course I'm teaching at George Brown. I usually give this sort of example because it really needs to resonate. When I do consulting with project managers and site supers, I do the same thing. And it really resonates with them because as you do it, they've got 1,000 examples of it in their head. So as the old saying goes, time, cost, quality, pick any two, but you can't have all three without impacting at least one. There's some truth to that, right? It's not 100% truth, but there's definitely some truth to that. There's limitations on what you can do. That's why I know a company out west, Stuart Olson, they had a really good protocol that they would do with their clients. They draw a big sort of triangle on a whiteboard at the beginning of the project, and they'd have time, cost, quality, and they'd have to ask the client, push comes to shove, which is your biggest driver? What is the most important? We know they're all important, but push comes to shove, what is your most important driver? And, you know, it's good to know where your client stands because it helps you to provide the best options when things come up on a project, when they make changes, when they want to do something differently, when there are delays, etc. It's good to understand, put yourself in the client's shoes. There's an excellent book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written in the late 1930s by Dale Carnegie. And one of the big things about that book is put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try to look at it from their perspective. Try to understand where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with them, but it's good if you really understand where their headspace is. And then in the case of a business relationship, you can provide better solutions to them. George Brown, I can tell you, e-building, our priority was time. That was when they got rid of grade 13. We had an extra 2,000 students coming that September, and we didn't have a plan B. So I believe me, it was time. Different client could be totally different. If you're building vaccines right now, that's a tough one. You definitely know that it's going to be the two that are going to be utmost important are time and quality. Cost? No, not so much. You spend $1 billion to save $1 trillion. Well invested, right? So you can see what I mean. The best 2 out of 3, think about that one for a few minutes. Quality's utmost important, very important, and so is time. We can work around the clock. We can be building plants on the side, paying overtime. We can do a lot of stuff on the other one, right? So it's good to sort of understand how that works. And see it working in the real world. See it working with yourself. Really, when you start thinking about things those ways from your personal view, it really resonates and it sticks with you, and that's important. So write down your high-level personal goals, list them. I'm recommending you try this just for your own personal sake. I've been doing this for years. I keep a journal, and I use this all the time. I'm doing things all the time with this. So for probably 20 years, I've done the goals aspects, and it's really helped me in a lot of ways. It's really definitely helped me in a lot of ways. Have high-level business, learning, personal, that you may have for your own goals, where you see yourself in 5 years, 3 years, etc. Can be helpful from that perspective. I've written a couple of textbooks, and I had them as goals long before I ever started to write them, and it makes it easier that way. Look at the list, prioritize, and delete. You don't try to have a million goals, because it's going to be too difficult. You're going to water them down, and you're not going to accomplish anything. So you have to be very careful about the goals that you select and how you go about going after them. And break them into smaller goals. A good example I can think of is writing a book. You know, the one book I finished a couple of years ago, Project Management, Planning, and Scheduling, it was 12 chapters. So I said I wanted to do the first draft in a year. So 12 chapters in a year, that's 12 months, 1 chapter a month. All right, I want to do 1 chapter a month. What does that mean? To get 1 chapter a month, I figured I had to be writing at least an hour a day. All right, so at minimum, I want to write an hour a day to get that going on that process. It ended up taking more than that, but at least I had that broken down, and then I could monitor how I was doing. Otherwise, you say, I want to write a book, and then you know what? Before long, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August are gone, and now you're trying to write a book in 4 months. What's going to happen? Quality is going to be impacted. If you can finish quality in time, you won't be able to finish it. Okay, so it just gives you an idea of how things can work in the real world and how things work in projects too. When we start with a construction project, the goal is to finish this hospital in 4 years. Big goal, right? It's a $1.4 billion hospital, Humber River Hospital. Want to finish this in 4 years? There's our time frame. All right, so what do we have? What are major milestones for this project? What are the substructure? Okay, so what do we have to do within the substructure? You know, when you start breaking it down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and you get down to the lowest level, the activity level. And each one of those is a mini goal to get done that leads and feeds into the overall project. So it's a way of thinking about projects. Fifth constraint is safety, and safety is a very important area in the construction industry. In North America, we've moved heads and tails from where we were even 25 years ago. We were not the best industry. We still got a ways to go, especially I would say in the smaller sectors tend to be the most dangerous, renovations and small construction projects. The big projects, there's a lot of safety consideration goes into them, and we could still do better. A good example is this Dreamliner, the 737, you know, problems that Boeing had. And then you get articles like this out of the New York Times. There's a full article in the New York Times on this. Is just a clipping. I was set to go to Edmonton. I think it was February. When was it? I guess it was February of 2019 or whenever they pulled them off. Anyways, I was sitting at the airport and I saw all these cancellations go up, and I was on one of those planes that was supposed to fly to Edmonton. So my flight was canceled. I had to quickly switch and get another flight. If I'd known it was a 737, I probably wouldn't have wanted to get on it in the first place with all the issues that they were having. So then you get this kind of stuff that comes out. You don't want to be a sites manager that is not doing your due diligence protecting your employees. I know you have other safety courses that you do at George Brown. I'm just pointing this out. It is one of the constraints that you need to consider. And from a morale perspective, a cultural perspective, an ethical perspective, you don't want to compromise safety. And to be honest, from a profit perspective, you know, your company is going to really mess themselves up with WSIB premiums and Ministry of Labor fines if they don't make sure that they're following everything that they possibly can in this regard. So when we talk about goals, there's what Jim Collins calls in Good to Great, Jim Collins in Good to Great, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that's companies that they have goals that they really want to stretch themselves to meet. probably one of the biggest goals that I can think of in the last 60 years would be the manned spacecraft going to the moon. And Kennedy had sort of the statement, a little bit gender biased for the time period. We're going to we're going to send a man to the moon and return him safely this decade, right? And at the time, that was like a pretty lofty goal to have, but they actually were able to do that. And goals tend to have that sort of really well-defined, explained, and sort of engaging areas that kind of tells a story. It can really be a big sort of pickup for your opportunity to be able to achieve that. There's a lot of other stuff behind that we're going to talk about this semester, but it is important. Lean construction, I'm going to bring up lean construction this semester too. It's something that's changing rapidly in the construction industry. I just got myself CM Lean certified when I was on a sabbatical a year ago. So I'm kind of up on all of this lean construction methodology. Companies like PCL, Ellis Don, Bird Construction, Maple Rinders, they're all jumping on this lean processes. Really, it's evolved out of the manufacturing sector, and it's about removing waste. Well, remove waste means you improve efficiency, productivity. It's going to lower your costs. It's also going to have a lot of benefits to your clients. So lean construction actually indicates that 50% of weekly goals are met, leading to missing of the big, hairy, audacious goals. Some of its research in this area finds that in activity basis, about 50% of the goals get achieved and about 50% don't. They actually have a way of monitoring it called percent plan complete. Completed weekly assignments divided by total weekly promised assignments. So it's really trying to engage understanding on what you're trying to achieve and monitoring it and not over-promising. Jim Collins has another example. When I teach the construction business management to the degree students, I usually get them to use a book called Good to Great. And it's a very good business book. And one of his statements is get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and then decide where to drive the bus. So in other words, if you got people that are motivated and engaged to begin with, so you're very careful in your hiring processes, and you monitor them carefully, and if you get them in the right seat doing what they're best at, and if there's people that really aren't into what they're doing, getting them off, then your company is going to become a great company over time, and you're going to create a really sort of engaging culture. So when we think about thinking with regards to goals thinking, I've heard it said a number of times that we shouldn't be thinking about goals. It's systems, right? I've even heard it say goals are for losers. You got to think about systems. And I'm always a little bit skeptical when somebody wants to throw something out, but at the same time, I want to listen and see if it makes sense. And it definitely makes a lot of sense to me, the systems thinking part, not the throwing out the goals part, but the systems thinking. Because I want to also keep you in mind that with one of the issues with goals is it's kind of at the end of something, and you got to enjoy the process. So when you're talking about personal goals, it's pretty difficult if you're trying to achieve a certain goal and you don't like what you're doing. It's more difficult. So if it's engaging for you, it's much more easy. So in other words, you got to enjoy the journey. Got to figure ways to celebrate too during the journey. Systems thinking though is, how can I repeat the journey, right? So a goal could be I want to run a marathon. Systems thinking is I run 4 times a week, and this is my sort of schedule, and this is what I do, and this is how I mix things up so that I'm not getting bored and I'm improving. So systems thinking is thinking about a process. The goal is I want to run a marathon, maybe at a certain time period, right? A lot of people, if they only think about the marathon goal, they run the marathon and then they quit running, and then they never run again. So they haven't developed that way of repeating that success and getting that feeling. Well, if I'm a company and I build a hospital successfully, well, I'd want to have systems developing that I could repeat that success on the next project, or at least increase the likelihood of me being successful. That's systems thinking. And systems thinking also includes how to improve processes to reduce waste and to reduce repetition of work. So it has a whole bunch of things that think about things in that way. I'll let you read through the slide, but I think I always have different examples that I come up with on the fly as I'm talking about things. But we see it in construction all the time, like the software programs, that productivity software programs that people use to manage their project. Now you're going to be having your lab class, and so when you're looking at the lab, you want to look at the lab class and think about processes that can be utilized potentially to improve productivity in those cases. I'm not of learning a particular software. So when you get out there, there's so many different productivity softwares around. I'm of the opinion that you just got to figure it out, whatever the productivity software is, and then leverage it to your advantage. But you have to understand the basic fundamentals of how things work that underlie these systems. And any system is trying to remove extra steps to make it easier for you to do things. And typically it's making you to do easier for you to do things that aren't that complex. And that leaves you more time to think about and implement the things that are really complex, that systems can't really handle. We're not at the stage of AI in construction yet. I don't know, 25 years from now, maybe, but right now we're not there. So I think they're both very, very important. We have to have goals. We have to be able to measure, benchmark ourselves. But the more systems that we have, that can be helpful too. We also have to be careful that we don't have so many systems that it makes it difficult to innovate. Elliston, a company I do a lot of consulting work with, they're very clear on it. They don't want to have so many systems and rules and policies that people feel handcuffed and they don't want to innovate because things are changing so rapidly. You want to be able to innovate. So they kind of challenge it that way. PCL has a lot of systems and protocols in place, but they also are being careful that they're kind of more so this way. Elliston's a little bit more so that way. And there's this sweet spot in the middle where if, for example, Elliston, if they have if they're too lax on their system, then people do things they shouldn't do, and then they have problems. On the other hand, if you got too many systems, then people don't innovate, and you got problems. So there's this sweet spot in the middle where you have enough systems in place that you can also innovate. So that's important. And we have to organize the project delivery system. So we have to think about the personnel that's going to be involved on the project. All of these points here with, what are we going to do ourselves as a company? Some companies self-perform the forming work if you're doing a reinforced concrete structure. Some don't. Toronto, very often we don't because we have such good forming subcontractors. It's hard to beat them in efficiency and price. Go to other markets like Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary. I find a lot of the same GCs that are here self-perform there because the subcontractor market is not as strong as, say, it is in Toronto. So these are some of the things that you want to think about. How we're going to contract the work out, phase the work, section it out, reporting requirements to the customer. What does the contract require us to do? How are we going to structure this? It's all part of the project delivery system that we're using. Extent of cost control and reporting required. Part of that's got to do with the type of contract that's involved. If it's a P3 type project, it would be very, very extensive. Like on a P3 project, every little tiny invoice and every item is being carefully and diligently checked. And if you so much as are off by $15 in your invoice, it can take several hours to clarify. If you look at the cost involved in that, it's probably not worth it. But if you look at having accountability, it is in those kind of cases. I speak from that one on personal experience on one of the projects I was on, Ottawa Light Rail Transit. Public versus private work and the marketplace. Of course, that's different too. If it's a public-based project, things have to be transparent. If it's private, they don't necessarily. Leadership on our projects. So, you have to have a really good vision of the project. You have to have plans for achieving the completed project. These are fundamental points that we have to think about in leadership. It goes much beyond these points here, but it gives you sort of a good sort of introduction of things. Leadership, I could spend a whole course on just leadership very easily, right? And we'll bring it into the play as we go through the course. Problem solving abilities with leadership too. We have to consider when we have changes, when we're putting together things. Whatever you're deciding, it has impacts on other parts and players in the project. And if it's negative impacts, what are the implications of these, right? What's the cost impact, time impact, quality impact? What's our best solution given the conditions? That's why it's helpful, as I said, if you work with the client, where do you stand on time, cost, quality right now? And then later in the project, when you're giving a response and they say, no, I'm more worried about this. Oh, have you changed where your viewpoint is? It helps us to understand. The types of record keeping, we have to have systems to document things. In construction, it is so important to have effective documentation because things happen, things delay, problems are caused, and then everybody always wants to blame the contractor. And you want to be able to say, yes, this is my fault, or no, this is not my fault. This is because of this. This is because the consultant took longer to respond to our submittals. We dated this submittal on this date. They were supposed to get back to us within 5 business days or 10 business days, and they took 25 business days. That 15 days was on the critical path, and it delayed the project. You want to have the documentation that you can challenge those, because maybe it's delaying the project by 15 days. That means your site team has to be there an extra 15 days. There's cost associated to that. There's a per diem cost for every day you're on site. So trying to get that into our heads early is helpful. As I've mentioned, planning and scheduling is a real passion of mine because it fits with goals, it fits with systems, it integrates with everything. We need to plan and schedule our projects so we can control our projects. So we need to develop a plan and a budget and fit within the budget and the time constraints and figure out, from the end to the beginning, how are we going to construct things? What are the relationships between the activities? Which activities have flexibility on time? Which activities are on the critical path, right? And so this becomes very important in making sure that we're keeping to that. And then as we go along in the project, how are we doing? How is this comparing to our baseline schedule? And understanding if we fall behind, we have to find a way to get that time back. While we're doing that, we can also, going back here, we can do this in different systems. You can do it in a scheduling system. You can do it in a different cost accounting system. There's different ways of monitoring your costs, but you need to control your costs. Okay, we're on time, but we're over budget, right? So why are we over budget? What's costing more? And what can we do to save money in these particular areas? So we've benchmarked that, and that also gives feedback to the estimating department so that they don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So it is that learning that comes from the estimated cost, the actual cost, the historical costs, what were they? That helps to feed in. Experience feeds in, understanding feeds in. But then this information can go back, and then that, if it's done well and tracked well, it can be really helpful to improve the predictability. Construction is filled with variability. One of our jobs is to narrow that down and improve the predictability on our projects. Very important. Quality management. I know you have a course on quality management, but obviously it's important and it affects everything. If we have to redo things, that's going to impact our budgets. That's going to impact our time. And we're going to have dissatisfied clients. So we have to have mechanisms in place to ensure that what was in the specifications is going into our project. We have to have approvals processes. We have to do mock-ups. We have to have submittals. And we'll get into all of these things and topics in your textbook, of course, your construction site management textbook, and these lectures. And your lab teacher will be able to do that very effectively as well. So safety management, we've got as well, of course, those are all the constraints. And again, you've got another course I know that you do on that. but as I said earlier, morally, ethically, culturally, and then it gets into costs, right? All for those reasons. We have to make sure that we fit within our contract, submittals. As I said, we'll be getting into that. Material, permanent equipment submittals, shop drawings, project meetings, change control documentation and compensation, progress payments, the whole project closeout process comes into contract compliance. And having some sort of system that we can track and organize our materials in is extremely helpful for us. So just to wrap up on lecture 1A, rely on project management to manage your profit centers. Goal of a construction project: be successful, profitable, have happy, satisfied clients, have happy, satisfied subcontractors too, by the way. If you want to have the best subcontractors, you've got to be very on your game. If you're delaying them unnecessarily, you're not planning out the work, you're not coordinating the work, you're not facilitating it on site. If I'm a subcontractor, I'm going to end up losing money on your project. You know what? The next time, if I price it for you, I'll price it higher because I need to be able to make a profit. I'm not being malicious, I'm just being realistic if I'm a subcontractor. That's why the best subcontractors put a lot of effort into effectively managing their subcontractors. So we'll get up to lecture 1B shortly. So hope you enjoyed this lecture. And this is Tom Stephenson signing off for now, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.